My cheating fiancé was having an affair with my mother, and it turns out that he is the father of my baby brother. I found out my fiancé was having a 4-year-long affair with my mother. However, it got even worse. You see, 4 years ago, my mother became pregnant from a drunken one-night stand, and my fiancé insisted that he'd help care for the baby. The baby also brought on a huge financial burden, and my mother asked me to work a lot to help her out. I drove my health into the ground by doing so. Over the years, I asked many times why she wouldn't contact the father for child support, but each time she made an excuse. The stress of working 2 jobs took a toll on me, and so I cried to my fiancé a lot, and that eye hole held me and wiped my tears every single time, knowing damn well that he was the father of my brother. As soon as I had uncovered this, my heart broke. I sat in silence, not knowing what to do, and eventually when I found the strength to speak, I called my fiancé, Liam, downstairs, and he asked me what was wrong and why I was crying. I told him that I knew. He looked down at me, holding his old iPad on which I had found the messages, and his face dropped in an instant. He knew exactly what I was talking about. He didn't even try to deny it. He told me that he slept with her not just at the time of conception, but multiple times while I went out with my girlfriends for dinner or to the club. He was the one who encouraged me to take a girls' holiday because he saw how stressed out I was at work and said I needed a break. He confessed that during that trip, he slept with my mother many times. The realization that he had an affair with my mom while I was on the trip sickened me. I felt betrayed. I was texting him throughout the trip telling him I miss him, all while he was in bed with my mother. He said that the last time they were intimate was when they found out she was pregnant with David, my little brother. He said they decided to keep everything a secret to avoid destroying our family. His words felt like daggers to my heart with every moment. I stared at him in disbelief. I told him I couldn't do this anymore. He begged and pleaded for me to stay, but I told him this was too far. An affair was bad enough, but with my mother was a different type of disrespect. I quickly packed up me and David's bags and called one of my closest friends to ask if we could stay with her. She agreed. Before I left, I told Liam to tell my mom that I no longer wanted to speak to her, and she was dead to me. It hurt my heart to lose my mom and fiancé in one day. They were my family, but I couldn't be around them after what they'd done. As I was driving to my friend's house, every time I would look in the rearview mirror, I would see a mini Liam smiling back at me from the back seat. The face was so innocent, but it brought me so much pain. I felt sick every time I thought about how I had cared for my brother, not knowing he was my fiancé's child. After a few days of staying with my friend Stacy, Liam showed up at her house. They were talking loudly in her driveway as I was pulling in. He noticed my car and ran up to it. He begged me for another chance and apologized over and over again for cheating on me with my mom. I told him that no matter what he did, I didn't want to be with him anymore. He said that he hadn't touched her since the day she found out she was pregnant, which was over 4 years ago, but I didn't care. I had my mind made up. He then said he'd do anything to get back with me again. He said he'd pay for us to get therapy so we could be a family again. I told him that that wouldn't be necessary since I wasn't getting back with him. He then asked if he could at least see his son, and I said he could see him whenever he wanted. He asked to get him for the weekend with consistent partial custody. He swore up and down that he didn't want to be with my mom anymore. I said no. I was too angry with him. He hadn't cared about my wants or needs or even my feelings, so why should I? He became frustrated and told me this wasn't over, got in his car, and sped off. The days I was staying with Stacy, I didn't tell her why me and Liam broke up, and after that encounter, she was speechless. I led her back inside and told her everything. I made sure David was in his room so he wouldn't hear us. I told her about Liam and my mom and how my ex-fiancé is the father of my mom's baby, and she stared at me with her mouth open the entire time. She was beyond perplexed. She told me she was sorry and that we could stay as long as we needed to. She said she was here to support me with whatever I needed, and that she understood my decision not to give Liam partial custody. That night, I felt heard. Stacy comforted me and validated my feelings. I thought that the rest of my family and friends should know the truth as well, especially because I didn't want Liam to spread any lies about me. I posted on our family's Facebook group explaining my side of the story, and even shared the screenshots of the messages that I sent to myself from Liam's iPad. The group chat turned into an uproar. One of my aunts was accusing me of being a liar, while the other side of the family was in support of me. They said they understood now why I had cut off my mom and fiancé. My grandparents, who were particularly close to my mom, both told me that I needed to delete the screenshots from the group chat, and I needed to stop spreading lies about their daughter. I said in response to that if Liam wasn't the father, then to ask her who the real dad was. I didn't get a reply from them. My cousin felt really bad about the situation, and offered a room in her house for me to stay. I took her up on the offer because I no longer wanted to burden Stacy with my family drama. I decided that I needed to get a new job in a new city, and to get far away from them as well. My cousin's house was a few states away, and I thought this would be the perfect place for me and David to stay for the time being. I was in the process of moving in with my cousin when I made a StoryTime post on Instagram about the infidelity. This did cause a stir in me and Liam's shared friend group. Some of them sided with me, but others doubted my story. It was mainly the guys that he went to college with that denied my story. They'd known Liam from their fraternity and stood 10 toes behind him. Since everyone in the comments underneath my post, which got a bit more attraction than I ever meant it to, was cooking him and sending hate mail to his DMs, he deactivated his account. Shortly after, his parents started contacting me. They said they hated to see Liam lose a girl like me. They told me he was very depressed and that I knew that overall, Liam was a good guy, and that I should take him back. I told them that I didn't need to hear this from them as it was already what Liam had said before. They said that they were on his side because he had been faithful for over 4 years now and tried to convince me to take him back again. I told them no once again and asked them not to contact me regarding Liam because I was determined to move on from him. The next few weeks, my mom and my ex constantly tried to contact me. I blocked both of their numbers, but then they'd call from different throwaway numbers or send members of my family to contact contact me, but I didn't want to hear it. Liam would try to get our shared friends to DM me on Instagram, and every time they'd ask the same question. Would you just hear Liam out? I would give them the same answer, no. I didn't want to block them like I did with Liam's parents because, at the end of the day, we were still friends, but I had to look out for me. One day my mom found out I had moved out of Stacy's house into my cousin's house. She showed up and rang the doorbell. Once I saw who it was, I told my cousin not to answer and to leave it alone, but this woman wouldn't stop. She rang the doorbell 20 more times until I finally opened the door. I threatened to call the cops on her if she didn't leave. She said she wanted to talk to me. I said there was nothing to talk about and tried to close the door. She stopped the door with her foot and told me how sorry she was and that she and Liam didn't have anything going on after David was born. I told her again that I didn't care and wanted both of them out of my life. This wasn't 100% true. The truth was I missed my mom. We were best friends before this happened. She had always been there for me growing up, but having a kid with my fiancé was too much to bear in our relationship. I asked her to respect my wishes and left. That night, she sent me a long paragraph saying again how sorry she was and blamed her grief for the affair. She said that since the day I brought Liam home, he always reminded her of my father. She said they looked alike and even talked similarly. My father passed in a car accident before I could remember. I didn't have any pictures with him, and the only time I saw him was the wedding photo of him and mom that sat in my grandmother's living room. She went on to say that Liam made her feel exactly like their father did, and it felt like a rekindling of their love again. She said she was so struck with grief that she couldn't think straight. Even though my father died over 20 years ago, she said it still hurts like the first day she found out. This still didn't seem like a valid enough reason to sleep with him on multiple occasions. This long text felt like a punch to the gut. I was more confused than ever, and the pain I felt was immeasurable. In the midst of all this chaos, my ex-fiancé pursued legal action to get partial custody of his son. The court proceedings were exhausting and emotionally draining. I felt he was only trying to get partial custody of David out of spite. He still seemed interested in me and wanted a reason to talk to me. I could see right through it. Despite everything we'd been through, the judge granted him partial custody because he was technically the actual father of the child. This was another blow to my already shattered heart. Liam would take David for the rest of the summer, and during the school year, David would be with me. Since it was June, the judge said that from this day until early August, David was set to be with Liam. He said this was the best way for us since I planned to live in a different city. As we were leaving the courtroom, David ran up to me and jumped in my arms. He told me he didn't want to live with Liam and that he wanted me. I sniffed tears back and told him that it would only be for a little while and that I'd call him every day. In that instant, Liam snatched David away from me and said stop trying to turn his child against him. David began crying and screaming. I hugged him and told him that I loved him. Later that day, I watched them as they drove off, wiping away my tears to see more clearly. I decided that I knew I had to try my best to make the switch as smooth as possible and to use this time to invest in myself so I could be the best big sister to David when he returned. With my personal life in ruins, I decided to focus on my career as a nurse. I started to consider moving to a new city, somewhere I could start fresh and leave all these painful memories behind. It was a daunting thought, but I knew I needed to do something to move on. I ended up moving out of my cousin's house. She had been a pillar of support through all this. She helped me save money for rent, gave me emotional support, and helped me get back on my feet. I moved to Georgia to get a nice home with plenty of land for David to run around on. I saved enough money to not worry about needing a job for the first few months. And even though I felt frozen by fear of the future, I began job hunting. I updated my resume, applied for jobs within my community, and even started therapy to help me process everything. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to move on. I knew I had to be strong for David, and that's exactly what I did. One day, while packing up some of my things, I found an old photo of my family from before everything went to hell. I realized that while my family had fallen apart, I still had the power to build a new life for myself and for David. It was time to take control of our future.